was trying to get a hold of me.
Good evening and welcome to Lodi the World. We're in a new venue tonight because we've got two people here and I don't have the facility to handle that at home. Lodi the World is a show where I talk to local leaders and influential individuals about Lodi and how it interacts with the world and the world interacts with us. Tonight we are at Attwill Medical Solutions, and I am talking with two of the co-founders of the business, William Jackson and Attwill Medical, Bill
Nice.
and T. There was an article this week talking about what they're doing with the potential COVID oral vaccine. And there's a lot more going on. So we're going to sit here and chat for half an hour, 45 minutes. And let you know that Lodi is apparently doing some big things in the world that nobody has really been aware of. So, Bill, how the hell did you get to Lodi?
Well, T and I started out as partners, and we had a technology that involved freeze drying, and I had dealt with our predecessor here in Lodi to freeze dry collagen products and things like that. So we ended up coming here to do the freeze drying, and lo and behold, one day is after about, I guess it was about 2 years, right?
Yeah, pretty close. Yeah, 2 years.
And T and I were both walking out the door. We got into the car, and T looks at me and says, "You know what?" I said, "We should." And he goes, "You know what?" And I finished his sentence and said, "We should buy this place."
Yeah.
And the owners were getting fairly mature in their age and wanted to sell. And we looked at the business and decided there were a lot of other things we could do beyond probiotics and things like that. And so we've been converting the plant over to do our own technologies and do vaccines and reagents for COVID-19 test kits. So it's pretty cool what we're doing here. We've got a number of our own products that we're bringing to market. We love the fact that the real estate is reasonable price here. We love the fact that we've got great support from the community, and there's a well-educated workforce around the area. And Madison, University of Wisconsin, just down the road. The institute, MATC is just down the road. So there's a source of qualified, bright people that we can access here. So that's how we ended up. It was just really
Worked out nice.
Yeah.
So
if I understand now, you grew up in the same town.
Not just the same town, like a few blocks from each other. We didn't know this because when I met Bill originally, I was working at another medical company, and he was working at a medical company, and we met each other through a common program we were working on. And so
he doesn't mention to you that he didn't like the technology.
I didn't like it. It was my job to review technologies and decide whether we were going to continue to work with them, and I didn't like the one they had. And then he kind of, I don't know how he showed up at the company one day, showed up and talked to the CEO of the company and somehow sold the idea to them again. And so I ended up working on this project. But so in any case, we, after we got together and
ate an awful lot of Portuguese chicken and things like that, remember?
Yeah, we had a lot of food. After we got together and ate a lot of food, we realized that he lived a few blocks away from where I was born and raised. And
where is that?
In Hamilton, Ontario.
Hamilton, okay.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Oh, no,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, I had friends in Mississauga and Toronto, so going through Hamilton and
you didn't stop in Hamilton.
Well, no. One of my friends was from Hamilton. He says, "There's nothing here."
Man.
Hamilton's beautiful.
It's Hamilton and what's the other one right there?
Burlington.
There we go. I remember the names. So
we were like both from Hamilton and didn't realize that we lived that close to each other. And then one day we were chatting about, my dad had a really big garden in the backyard, like the garden.
Grapes and fruit, also. Typical what you get in Hamilton, right?
Yeah. We just growing his garden, and we had an alleyway in the back, it's older neighborhood, the alleyway in the back. And so there was a house right behind us. And my dad would always talk to the people there and then we'd give them bags of like tomatoes or whatever, because we always had plenty out in the yard. Turned out it was his sister-in-law. And we didn't know that at the time, obviously. This came out like maybe a couple of years ago. We figured that out.
Yeah,
right?
that was funny.
Yeah, so that's a small community, right? When you're thinking about it that way.
And that's one of the things we talk about when I'm talking to people on the show and about Lodi and stuff. And I grew up here, and I've watched it grow. And I look at it and go, "Oh my God, we've gotten big now."
Yeah.
But I talk to people that have come in recently, and they say, "Wow, this is a wonderful little small town," but there's always a feeling that you're not from Lodi unless there's a road named after you. As sort of a running joke. Someone said that, and I laughed. How long have you been here now? It's not been very long. Maybe
We've been here at least 5 years.
Coming back
but
and forth,
we bought the business in 2017.
okay.
And the 2017 basically. So
Yeah. And so
we owned the business for 3 years.
Yeah.
But we've been coming here since 2015 or so, right?
2014 is when
2014.
you and I started our company in 2013.
Right.
And we did all of our prototyping and stuff, sort of on our own. And
Then we licensed it. Yeah,
then we licensed it, and
technology.
then we needed a place to make it. And we decided to do that here. So we
yeah.
started as a research project here. And then we converted over to owning the business. And
How did you find this place?
Well, he worked with these guys through that other, remember when I said I met him when he was working at another company?
Yeah.
That other company was working with these guys.
Okay.
we made some product here. And I really, really loved the plant. I always had a very, very, romantic notion around this plant. Just the machinery and the infrastructure that was here was super solid. Now, it needed investment, but it was super solid. And it helps that when you're driving into the place, like the countryside, some of the most beautiful I've ever seen in the
gorgeous.
world. The world.
Yeah.
As we come up from Middleton and come into town, that one hillside that you see coming over the hillside, and in the spring, there's all the pastures are different colors, and you can go anywhere in the world and you won't find anything more beautiful.
That's
than
probably right outside of Dane.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
I know exactly where you're
Yeah.
talking about, and that is a gorgeous view of the farms and kind of overlooking
Just-
Dane in the distance. And
The other thing that was really neat about here was that, the town is growing, but like where we come from, it's like more like a village, right?
Yeah.
Like you and I, in the areas that we've been in and what we've done, the city is kind of broken up in these almost little village-like atmospheres where a lot of people know each other. And like the guy who he got his hair cut from is the same barber that I use.
Yeah.
So it's just like this intersection that never leaves the town, right?
so you've been here for now, call it 4 years. Do you feel welcome? Do you feel you're part of the community?
Oh yeah. I mean, from day one, I don't think, even when we were just visiting and doing the work here, once every couple months come out here, definitely, it's always, there's not one not friendly person around here. And we're pretty open. Hamilton's the same kind of way as a lot of people that we're from Canada. We're Canadian originally, obviously. So we're friendly people to begin with. And you walk into any place, the police are waving at you hi when they're turning the corner. And I'm like going, I gotta love this place, man. So yeah, it's like, it's definitely very, community oriented. A lot of people talk to you and stuff. So
Do you remember we were here? It was summertime, I think it was, and they had the little fair, like they have a little carnival.
We've got
Susie the Duck thing.
Okay. Now are you talking about Susie the Duck Day, which will be in August?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
because the fair is completely different.
That's
Right.
different,
That's
So
the
this is
Lodi
the-
Ag Fair.
But you know, the two of us found it so charming, right?
With the duck race, right? They have
Yep,
the race.
okay, that's usually the duck day.
And they
which-
had all sorts of little, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
which we could not do this year, unfortunately.
yeah.
So we're depending on you guys.
So we can
So-
have Susie the
So
duck
that
day.
next year we can have the duck derby
You
again.
know it. You know it.
Um,
And the band was pretty good too. I like those guys.
The band was great.
Very good.
So I'm going to take that.
We
now.
had Lodi sausage, by the way. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
another selling
You like
point.
that
Remember?
too?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was
Oh.
good.
Best sausage around.
Yeah.
They've been, now, you probably know it as the Lodi Sausage Company. Those of us who have been here for a while, it's the locker market.
Locker market.
Because, and I never knew the name. I had actually asked my mom about this. Way back in the 20s or 30s, you could rent a locker in their refrigerator.
Oh wow.
So you'd buy your meat there and then you would store it.
Oh, that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were the locker market.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so they've been in business forever. So I want to go back a bit now. When you're talking about we're depending on you guys. COVID is on everybody's mind. And when I found out that you guys are doing reagent kits here, that was like, Lodi? And then I heard from Michelle when she was here doing the story when Congressman Grothman was here, that you're also in talks with two companies for oral vaccines. One is Vaxart and the other cannot be disclosed because of an NDA. That's global. That is astounding. And that Vaxart's looking at 1 billion doses a year
We signed on for 1 billion doses a year.
coming out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So walk me through
Wow.
it.
And you know, don't forget our program on the reagents. It's the plan you and I put together was a 1 million beads a day.
A day.
Okay.
A day.
Let's start with that. I tried to explain, based on what I had read and other things, on what you're doing here. Okay, so you're talking about these lyso beads.
What Lyo?
Lyo beads, sorry,
Yeah,
lyo
yeah,
beads.
yeah.
I keep putting the S
That's
in
okay.
there.
That's okay.
Lyo beads, which are
Very
the
small.
the reagents for the test.
Correct.
So the
Yeah.
chemicals that say yes or no on the test.
Correct. Yeah.
And you make them into a little
A bead.
bead.
Yeah. And then the bead goes into a test kit. Right.
So why do we do that, right?
Okay, so
Well, let's-
first of all, to
let's-
make money.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's
you're not doing this for free.
let's take a little step back before
Okay.
that. I think,
Yeah. So
because
why freeze dry?
So
in the
yeah,
first
so this is a freeze drying facility, and we knew we were coming here to do freeze drying because the product that was designed that we were selling to another medical company at the time was a freeze dried product. That's why we came here to do the work. But we saw more. I would say there was a bigger future at the plant because of the other capabilities that were here. Some solution chemistry capability was here. We had a lot of clean rooms, and we're both med.
We have 7.
We have
Seven clean rooms.
Yeah, yeah, and we're both med device guys, you know, and
That's what we grew up with.
right. And so we thought, okay, well, you know what, we're going to keep making med devices. Let's expand the capabilities of this plant. And part of that expansion, Bill being the marketing and sales guys that he is, you know, finds business, and sometimes they call you, and sometimes you call them, and next thing you know, we're talking to 4 companies that do COVID reagent tests that require freeze drying, and we're talking to
See, why,
You know.
traditionally, the reagents are liquids.
yeah.
Yeah,
So why-
that was going to be my.
Yeah.
Why
Well, that's a
freeze
wonderful
dry?
question, Bill. Let me address that for you. So it's about stability. It's about transport, right? How do you get something that contains very sensitive components like pieces of DNA or RNA or polymerases, things that are used during the test itself, these proteins and things that are very, very sensitive to light, to temperature, and those things. How do you get those things to go from your beaker in your laboratory to a drugstore and at somebody's house, right, to do the test? And the only way to really do that is to stabilize it by freeze drying it. So everybody knows you buy freeze dried foods,
Right.
And you put them in a bathtub. So you make these tiny little microbeads that are 1, 2, 3 millimeters in diameter, and you freeze dry them. So
For those of you who speak American sizes, it's about that big.
really small, really small. It's funny because that's how they spec them out. So now I can't even remember what it is in SAE.
Yeah.
But
3 millimeters is going to be like 16th of an inch.
there's 2.5 centimeters
There's
an
2
inch,
Plus
25
or
an
minus
inch. So,
1.325.
yeah, it's a tenth of an inch or something like that.
Yeah, it's
So-
going to be like a 16th.
Yeah,
eighth
yeah.
inch, 16th
Something
inch,
small.
somewhere in that range. Yeah, we're talking tiny.
So-
And the variances and tolerances that were allowed are
very, very
so tight. It's crazy.
Very
right?
small.
But we do it.
And so we create these beads with the reagents. So we get them in a liquid form. We have machines that basically create the droplets. We freeze them instantaneously in liquid nitrogen, and then we move them to a tray that goes into a freeze dryer. And then the freeze dryer does its job. And of course, the freeze dryer is a program. It's not just hit the button like a microwave and let her go, right? So you have to write programs, and you have to know what you're doing to write the programs, And so we're working with a couple companies doing that right now, and we've found some very decent formulations, and we've got very good positive results with these companies, and we're gearing up to do the, as promised, 1 million beads per day.
So 1 bead, 1 test?
1 bead, 1 test.
So you're looking at being able to do 1 million tests a day.
A day, correct.
And
On our existing automation, as we go to the next step, it'll be another 1 million beads a day. So the goal is by the end of the year, essentially, to be at 2 million a day.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine, right? These tests are meant to go into the home. So when you get up in the morning, you have your cup of coffee, you do your test, and you wait your 10, 15 minutes, and you got your results. You know whether you have influenza 1 or you've got COVID-19.
Yeah.
And this will go worldwide.
These tests are not just about COVID; they're about all of them.
so these are not just a positive, negative. These are
They're positive, negative, but each test is specific to a specific.
okay. So
Yeah.
if I wanted to know if I've got 5 different,
You'd buy
5
5.
different flus, I'd have to take 5
Each one
different
for
tests.
each
So
Okay.
this didn't come at T and I by surprise. We were actually looking at this 2 years ago because we thought it would be really neat to be, because there was the whole DNA testing with Illumina.
Yeah.
And then we started looking at this about 2 years ago before COVID because we thought a big target would be things like sexually transmitted diseases and being able to do analysis at home. And then
This is all called point of care testing. Is what it's called.
Okay, I was wondering. I saw POC
Yeah.
in the things,
Point of
and
care.
I'm like,
Yeah.
point of contagion? No, point of
Point of care. Yeah.
point of
Yeah,
care.
Yeah, that's what that is.
Right,
Okay.
and cancer therapeutics are becoming extremely targeted. So you're constantly analyzing the patient's results relative to the therapeutic and adjusting the therapeutic. So we saw this as an opportunity 2 years ago. The biggest problem was stuff had to go out to a lab and get tested because they hadn't made the electronics small enough and compact enough to do it at home.
Yeah.
And COVID hit, and tons of money went from the government to allow the hardware to be developed, which is probably the easier part of it because
Yeah.
the biologics that we do are the tricky part.
Right.
But everyone focuses on the money, the government money. Operation Warp Speed has been going towards the vaccine and the the pharmaceutical side of it.
Right.
But money has gone into
Right.
the hardware
testing as
side
well.
and the testing. Okay.
So you hear Fauci, Dr. Fauci, all the time. He's always talking about we got to do more testing.
Right.
It's never gonna go away. This testing, what we do here, is only gonna proliferate even more.
Yeah.
It's worldwide. people need the testing.
So right now, if we're talking just COVID and you're under your existing capacity, everyone in the United States and Canada could test every day.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah. For what we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
What we do, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whatever that is, because
I mean,
we're
I
looking at.
don't know how the hardware guys are gonna keep up, but we could do pretty good on the beat side.
But yeah,
Yeah,
because
the
we're looking
hardware
at-
guys have to figure out a way to keep
Hey,
up with us at this
Hey,
point. Yeah.
Foxtron, and I think Foxconn was supposed to locate in
Foxconn.
Foxconn, yeah, they're
Yeah.
one of the electronic producers, and Jabil is as well.
Yeah.
So we got to get those guys to hammer out more devices.
Well, it'd be good if they hammer out anything down there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got now testing, and you're looking at 2 million doses, 2 million tests a day. I assume that after COVID settles down, that's going to be split out into
Yeah,
a
it'll
broader
change-
spectrum.
It'll change focus. I mean, COVID's the focus now.
Right.
And with the strains that are coming out, so the spike protein and the other components of the virus that they're shooting toward for the vaccine, and they're using similar types of markers on the virus for the reagent test as well, for the test kits. But there are going to be strains like H1N1 has been around for 10 years.
Right.
It's just different strains. It might be an H2N3 or you're going to have different strains. So COVID's as this strain is probably not going to be around, but there might be another one.
It's like the flu changes every year.
Exactly, yeah.
You
And
know,
you have to
and-
keep up with it. So the smart guys on the reagent side that are making the tests themselves, they're sequencing the virus, they're finding the proteins that they're looking for, they're creating the reagents that we need. We go back and we make the beads for the diagnostic. And so every year you're pumping out these diagnostics to see if anybody's got this illness, right? So and you can do multiple diagnostics every year. Right now, like I said, everybody's focused on COVID, but in a year's time or 2 years' time, it'll be COVID plus, right? And we keep looking for other, viruses.
Yeah, so you can imagine that with the number of people who get cancer that end up cancer patients every year, and with the molecules that we use for
The markers.
therapeutics in cancer, you constantly have to be adjusting the medicine. So these test kits in the home environment become very, very important because they'll be able to test their responses daily, and that'll be uploaded through their phones and directly to the caregiver.
Yeah.
So there's a huge change afoot.
You can be basically changing your therapy, your cancer treatment.
The dose
It
level
would be on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That somebody would come back and go a little more. That
You don't have to wait a week for a lab to do the testing and give you back the data. You can do it immediately, right?
That's
Okay, here's where we're at.
This is
amazing.
where medicine is going.
Yeah,
It's going to be
sure.
very
Yeah.
targeted. It's
Yeah.
going to be, and being able to analyze responses is just going to be more and more important.
Now, I'm going to move forward a step. You had mentioned about now the vaccine.
Yeah.
So right now, the vaccines that we've got, the mRNA vaccines.
Yeah.
Are your traditional stick it in your arm, a jab, as the Brits say.
Yeah.
And they are very specific about the temperatures they can be stored at. Although,
They're sensitive, yeah.
was it AstraZeneca?
Mhm.
One of them just this week said that that the temperatures,
They can lower them to like regular room temperature almost. Right?
well, not room temperature, but
Refrigeration.
regular freezer temperatures.
Refrigeration or freezer.
That you not need special freezers. They can go into
Yeah.
standard freezers
Yeah.
for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all used to with the
Yeah.
vaccine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and limited transport too. 'Cause
Right.
You have to keep them frozen or cold to transport, so you're stuck with that type of transport.
And that requires special equipment and
Yeah.
special logistics and all the rest. And what you're talking about is, here's a bottle of pills.
Yeah. Here's some. Here's
Here's
some.
a pill in a little.
Here's some
packet,
contact C or
like a
something.
Contact C
Yeah.
like thing.
Yeah.
The really cool thing about our relationship with Vaxart is they have more than one vaccine,
Yeah.
and we are going to be the facility
Yeah.
that is going to be involved in all of their stuff.
These guys have been
Because
around a while as far as developing vaccines that are oral. you know. And they've had really good results. That they had an H1N1 vaccine that did really, really well compared to now
Traditional injectable.
Yeah, looking at it clinically, right? Clinical outcomes, they had really good results, you know. Not just looking at antibodies specifically, but looking specific clinical outcomes like were the patients better off? The answer was yes. Right?
Yeah, we talked about this a little before we started about Vaxart, and I had to look them up and do a little bit of research. And they had very, very promising first results.
Mhm.
And then there was a little bit of disappointment on part of it, which is the antibodies.
Yeah.
But there's something called T cells, or basically your white.
That part can take a couple of years, or you know, but you could take a year, you know, or something like that too.
But I mean, that is a long.
Yeah, but it's not the long.
Right.
Right. It's the long time for that was the development side, because at that point they had to make proteins, so they had to actually create the proteins that the virus was making in order to inject the proteins into the patient, right? So they were a little more stable. The vaccines were a little more stable because proteins are more stable than a strand of RNA or a strand of DNA. So originally, vaccines were developed by making proteins that resembled that virus. And then those proteins were put together in a solution, they're injected in your arm, and then you respond to those proteins, right? And then all the clinicals happen like normal. So the time periods are about the same, right? What we've done now is we've said, look, in order for us to make those proteins, it takes us years because we have to figure out ways to get them into bacteria or to other carriers, make them in a fermentation process, isolate them, make sure there's nothing else present, keep them. You know what I'm saying? That's
you're basically brewing a nice beer. And then filtering it and purifying it, and everything's got to be perfect.
And you're exactly, and it has to be perfect. You can't have contaminants. You can't, right? Okay. What we do now is we say, look, there's no reason to go put this DNA in a bacteria and ferment it to create these proteins. We can actually put the DNA into you, right? Because you have the machinery to make proteins. So rather than take like a coronavirus and give it to you as a dead virus and hope that it doesn't cause any problems, or isolate proteins and give them to the patient, what you do is you isolate the RNA fragments that create the proteins in the virus that you want to create.
The RNA, for those of you who have forgotten your high school biology, the RNA is the instructions on how to make the protein.
Exactly, and that is is placed into another virus that's non-infective, like an adenovirus or some other virus that's non-infective. It's given to you. The virus infects a couple cells in your body, and those cells start making those proteins. So now your body is making the identification proteins for coronavirus, right? Your body sees the proteins and says, oh, look, something different, and starts to create antibodies and T cells toward those proteins, right? That process, to me, being from scholastic from the old days when I remember molecular biology, is just as important as it was when Salk figured out that you could give someone a vaccine for polio.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the problems we're having right now is that people think that because it took us a year to make this vaccine, that we somehow shortcutted the safety process. But in fact, what we shortcutted was the development process. The safety process is exactly the same.
It's the same.
It's the same.
We're
doing phase 1s, phase 2s, phase 3s. We're doing the mice. Okay. Now, back to your first question about antibodies and the Vaxart thing. And if the Vaxart guys are watching, I get this wrong, you can call me and yell at me later. But so they did trials in the mice, right?
Yep. I'm just watching here. Will the freeze-dried pills be separated in strain variation?
Well, yeah. Obviously, each pill will represent a particular species or strain. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So the idea is that they did the study, and the way you do the mouse studies, right, is you don't necessarily look for antibodies, even though you can, but you also see if there's an infectivity issue, right? Mm-hmm. So you can see if you can grow virus in an animal, right? Like a mouse or a rat isn't going to get sick from coronavirus necessarily, but you can see if it replicates in that animal.
Right.
And what they found in their first studies was after they gave the pill or the treatment to the mouse, that they didn't see an infective capability. They didn't see the coronavirus being able to infect the animal.
So they saw the right response.
So
but they didn't necessarily see the antibodies.
Right. The infection was what they were looking for, and they found that it stopped the infection of the virus in that.
Okay.
in that range.
So we're looking at two things. We're looking at an antibody is a response to an infection.
Correct.
I've got it. My body responds by putting this out.
Correct.
The T cells are
A long-term, they're part of that whole antibody response.
they're more of a defense that you don't have to necessarily have been infected to build your wall.
Right. The T cells are there as a long-term precaution against that particular, right, that particular allergen. So whether it be,
So once you've got the T cells,
you've got a long-term immunity.
you've got a long-term immunity.
And you want those T cells to build quickly. That response to be fast. And so
You
so
want
it's
your
almost-
long-term immunity.
it's like a muscle, and if the muscle doesn't get exercised, then it doesn't respond, right? So the T cell generating that response that he's talking about is critical.
So what I'm getting at is that you can't, okay, if I'm going to test a vaccine on you,
Mhm.
I'm not going to give you the vaccine and a week later expose you to the virus to see if it worked, right? Because that's a bad idea, right? But with rats and mice that don't get sick from the virus, you can do that. You can expose them to a virus and see if the virus replicates and it doesn't cause any damage to them because they're not, infected by it. And see if they catch this virus.
So they've got their defenses. The T cells are there. We've got the defenses.
Right.
If
So
they don't.
Right. So the last study they did, the first phase 1 clinical, they had a lower antibody response, but they had a fantastic T cell response. So in reality, it's creating a very good response, even though we're so used to hearing about antibodies right now.
Because that's what the currently approved ones talked about.
Yeah.
So, but
The antibodies are basically you catch it a little bit.
Yeah.
And respond to it. The T cells are, nope, we're giving you a shield.
Yeah, T cells are long-term. If they
Long-term.
see anything that looks like that antigen, the T cells will make, the immune system it'll trigger the response to antibodies. So you make antibodies at some point, right? Your body will make them too, right?
So what you're doing with this is giving people a long-term
long-term immunity.
Long-term immunity.
Right.
Not necessarily a
lifetime immunity.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
But it's
Well, look at polio vaccine, right? I mean, what was the last time you got vaccinated for polio?
I don't know. I was 3, 5,
Right.
whatever.
Why don't you need it again?
You know.
Why don't you need it again?
I think the only vaccine,
Aside from it's not very popular anymore, there's not a polio going around. But
the only thing I know that I've ever had to have more than one of is tetanus.
yeah, tetanus. I had to get tetanus a couple of times. So the way Salk did polio is it was a bacteria, and he grew the bacteria in a petri dish. And then what he did is he kept growing different replicants of it, right? So he would take it out of one petri dish, put it in another, grow it again. So there was another generation. Then he'd grow another generation. And I think 8 or 9 generations later, he realized that the bacteria no longer infected the animals that he was testing it on. So he went, this bacteria is still a polio bacteria, but why isn't it causing the disease in these animals? So he realized that it had lost its ability to be the virulence. They call it virulence. It lost its ability to cause the disease. However, it did still give you the ability to be immunized.
It still looks like the bad thing to your body.
Yeah. So in those days, they didn't have the FDA. And they didn't have anything else. So he said, I'm going to give it to some babies and see what happens. So
we don't do that anymore.
No.
We don't do that anymore.
No, but they gave this guy.
Gee, we're not doing any of that.
But they gave this guy a ticker tape parade in New York.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, that was some pretty cool shit that guy did. I swore. I was supposed to swear.
Yeah.
So anyway, but you know what I'm saying? Like, now we're doing something just as, I think, as important as what he did. And we're all suspicious of it, which is funny. But this guy, what we are doing today is just as important as what he did when he figured that out.
Now you're going to be able to take the thing that, to me, when I heard about this as a stable oral vaccine, a pill.
Yeah.
They can be shipped anywhere in the
Anywhere.
I
world.
know it, yeah.
Anyway,
And they're
Yeah.
basically any conditions,
in your
Yeah.
little blister pack, get
in,
shipped out.
like I'm sending out a bottle of
Like
aspirin.
Amazon can deliver it to your
Yeah.
house.
So
Yeah.
when we're, well,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean,
So
I'm thinking we're looking at
think about the infrastructure issues this
South
resolves. I mean, you
America.
don't have
South
to go to the
America,
GP to get a shot. You
Africa,
don't have to go to the.
you know, there are places in Southeast Asia that are
Hard to get to.
hard to get to and woefully, I don't want to say backwards, they are undeveloped. I've had some experience witnessing some of that.
Yeah.
And
You don't need a syringe, you don't need a doctor, and you don't need electricity.
You don't need to
take
go
this
to the
pill.
pharmacy. You don't need to do.
You
you
need
We
know,
can
something
just-
to drink with it.
so
That's about it.
Lodi can send
Yeah.
out vaccines
to the world.
to the world.
Everywhere.
To basically, as long as somebody can get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's.
Yeah.
And that's coming out of this little facility back here.
Right here.
Yeah,
Right here.
Here on Development Drive. That's why
Yeah.
they call it
Yeah.
Development Drive.
Yeah. We hadn't thought of that before.
And okay, now, right now, at the capacity you've got right now.
Yeah.
You're looking at,
Well, okay, so we're
We're-
creating two plants basically. We're creating a pilot plant which allows them to do development work and continue with their clinical trials over time, right? Because as you develop the next vaccine, do your clinicals, and you want to be able to make 40 to 100.
Machines back there
Well, that's
in
what
that
it is.
room.
It's modular. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's modular. So we can add more machines to do this. Where the limitation really is creating the slurry, called the slurry, the part that we have to freeze dry. So the way it comes in, it'd be a liquid format or frozen format, and we would put it into a freeze dryer, and then it would turn to a powder, and then that powder is transferred into a pill format, into a tablet.
Yeah.
Right? And so the tableting capability internally, you can ratchet that up easily.
so I'm just saying, right now, if you were to go into production.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got all the testing done, you've got everything. Vaxart comes in and says, all right, let's go. How many can you make?
We can make probably about 150,000 a day right now.
All right.
Because we only have one small pilot plant area, but we're growing that plant.
That was the next thing.
Yeah.
When Michelle was here, she
We have
said
an area we're going to
We have
build
an
out.
empty room right now.
You're talking
That-
about a lot of growth in the next year.
You got-
Yeah,
Um,
you gotta remember, we have a capsule machine in this facility that's like the second of capsule machines. It's like the Cadillac of capsule machines, and we're not making capsules for them. We're making tablets. The tablet machine we have is very small because we're doing it for pilot work. Our capsule machine can do 1.2 million capsules a shift.
a shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 3.6 million capsules a day.
So
right?
our friends from companies like Carey and DuPont and like they're all saying, oh my God, we got capsuling capacity around the corner.
They're lining up to use the.
And that's
area.
Current.
Current.
Yes.
Now, you're expanding.
Yeah. Yes.
What is your?
So we got like a 3,000 square foot area that we're going to build out just for vaccines, and that's the one that's going to hit the $1 billion a year.
And you're looking at 15 people
Oh yeah,
hiring in the next couple quarters, and then
yeah.
another.
Maybe. Well,
And those
I think we said total like 50, right?
Well,
No,
Here.
it's like our total just for doing reagents and things like that is going to be about 65.
65.
Oh, right, for the
Yeah.
reagent side.
Yeah,
And
about-
Vaxart, we're looking at about, I think it was, we've already hired
20
4
people,
and plus
20
another
or something.
15. Yeah.
15.
So literally.
So you have 15 that you have specific positions for.
Yeah.
That you're going to be looking to hire.
Yeah, and you got to remember, this isn't just about it's not just about running the equipment or packaging or putting it into shippers and that kind of stuff. It's managing that environment
Right.
too, right? So it's going to run the gamut from people that are literally on the equipment, running the operators that are running the equipment, to people that are getting ready to inventory components and making sure upstream stuff's getting down here too.
So how many employees do you have right now, roughly?
Like 35, 40.
We're up to 42
40.
now.
Okay.
42.
So you're looking at being over 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty big employer for
Yeah.
Lodi.
plus our sales guys, we're starting to hire sales guys as well because we're bringing the bead manufacturing. We want to keep increasing that capacity. So it's just going to grow and grow and grow.
We're guessing we're going to have to buy some more land and build another building at some point. Because we we're limited. We looked at this property and we're limited a little bit to how big we can go here, but we probably have to.
We got pretty excited. We were a while back looking at actually building like a campus, a biotech campus here, right out here, and because of the land's relatively inexpensive, and we have access to a good labor market.
And we're in a good spot geographically. We're in a good spot in the States too.
Yeah, because you're centralized, right?
Yeah.
And you got good airport just down the road to get things out of here, and so the ability to keep expanding and building. There's land around here. We're hoping we can. The plan is to build a whole biotech campus here.
And we're not done. Like Bill and I, this is great. We love the vaccine thing. We love the reagent thing, but we're into our own things too, right? Like we're developing our own technologies too.
Well, ATH is take them on. Let's take our guests on the ATH road.
So we stumbled across a technology in Canada and licensed it, bought it. Actually, we own this technology, and it's basically. It was developed for pediatric surgeries to keep the patients on bypass, but little babies on bypass, but to reduce the possibility of them getting any clots or getting any microemboli that would cause damage to their brains or their lungs, right? And usually heparin is what's given to adults. And heparin is a very interesting molecule because
it's a bit dangerous.
Yeah, it's dangerous, and it because if you have to get your dosage right on the money, right? But heparin affects many other proteins in the clotting pathway. But your body has this component in it called antithrombin 3. And this molecule binds heparin when you give somebody heparin. And when it binds heparin, it makes it very specific to a specific element of the clotting pathway. So it takes something like heparin that affects a whole bunch of things and focuses it to affect one thing. And that's why it makes it much more safe. So antithrombin, when it binds heparin, makes heparin a safer molecule and a more effective molecule, right? Well, what we do is we bind heparin to antithrombin in a test tube. And then we use that to give to the patient. So you don't have to supply the antithrombin. We're supplying it with the heparin.
You're making it safe and targeting it.
Exactly.
We got the right molecule size of heparin to bind properly.
You selectively have to, when you buy heparin, it's called unfractionated heparin, meaning that it's just a whole bunch it's a milieu of proteins that's called heparin, and they have different molecular weights and different sizes. And we specifically choose a fraction of that unfractionated, and we add antithrombin to it, and it fuses together and forms the bond that it normally would form in your body. But because we're washing away all the other heparin that isn't used in the reaction, you're not getting anything that could cause you to bleed internally because of the dosage response or some other issues. So we reduce the probability of a number of illnesses, including what's called heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, meaning that it stops your platelets from working. And everybody knows you need your platelets to work to stop bleeding.
Right.
Because your body's constantly doing that, right?
Which is really, really important because you want to prevent the clots from happening, but in certain scenarios, but you actually want the clot to happen when it should happen.
Right.
Okay.
So you want the healing process. You don't want
and so
you don't want to have internal bleeding. So when you pull blood from a patient and put it into an oxygenator, for example, and you're oxygenating, in some cases, COVID patients were receiving blood oxygen that way. There's a probability, because you're exposing the blood to tubing and filters and other things, that you're going to create these clots. So what they do is they heparinize the patients, but that's very dangerous because you have to give them enough heparin not to clot, but because heparin is unfractionated, you can cause a lot of internal bleeding. So you have to be very, really careful.
So heparin's a shotgun, and you're taking it down.
Or a sniper rifle.
You're taking it down to a sniper rifle.
And so exactly, that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen?
I like the gun now.
I try to put things into a context.
I love that.
It's
more like a sawed-off shotgun versus.
But T, with COVID, one of the big side effects is blood clots in your lungs, blood clots in your bloodstream. blood clots getting into your kidneys and
The lungs
failure.
are the most dangerous.
Yeah.
Because you have
So this can get itself into the lung and actually prevent the clots from happening, or make that very clot antithrombic.
It's got really interesting problems.
It's pretty.
I think we're getting a little bit.
We're getting
deep here.
Yeah. But needless to say, it's one of our technologies we want to develop here.
Yeah.
We're also developing other medical products like anti-infective things for patients that have vascular access devices in them, like catheters for oncology or PICC lines or dialysis catheters. We've already got an approval through the FDA for one of those products. It's called HaloGuard. We're working on another product called FilterGuard, which also protects the patient from infection during access. So when you're accessing them for blood sampling or whatever, you have a catheter placed in them, reduces infection in the patient that way. And we're working on some other technologies that are just going to be our own, like here local.
Biomatrix, pretty cool too.
Yeah.
What we're doing with Biomatrix.
I'm gonna take us down here, because I would sit here and talk to you for hours about this. I am absolutely fascinated by it. When I went off to school, my dream was biomedical engineering.
Good for you.
And then I hit calculus and changed the theater.
It's surmountable, man.
I had a bad prof, and it was my test scores were instead of being good basketball scores, they were good hockey scores. But I am fascinated by this, and I am fascinated by the fact that we're doing this in Lodi.
Yeah.
That Lodi is going to be a hub for some amazingly advanced medical science.
Yep.
And that we're drawing in, we've got UW, and we've got UW hospitals, and we've got MATC, and we can pull from Chicago and Milwaukee and anywhere around here. That we have something that is going to draw in that high-end business and high-end employees and that tech, because we've got a great agricultural base, and we've got a very good industrial base with Alcar Rapid Pack over here. To be able to have that diversity and bring in science is wonderful.
America needs to keep manufacturing. We can't allow it to go offshore. We've got to keep it here. We've got to build it here, and we have to make sure that the stockpiles of what we need for our country here is still here. And that's a big problem. We all experienced with COVID, just face masks, for God's sake. We didn't have them.
We used to be the center of it, like that.
So
the U.S. was everything. We made tech. We manufactured everything. It was like,
it's good to know that there's a sense of security knowing that we're making this stuff here. We're making the vaccines and the tests and the rest of the stuff. We're making it here, and there is a blue collar craftsman ethic in this area.
Yeah, there is.
That we're going to do this. We're going to do it right, because golly gosh darn, if we don't, Bob down the street's going to come and give me a piece of his mind.
Right. Yeah.
So all right. So I would
come and see us in 6 months again.
I was going to say, I am going to keep in contact with you,
Yeah.
and I definitely want to hear more about what's going on and your expansion and new technologies and anything that's coming up. Let me know, even if it's just a quick blurb that we post.
Sure.
To say, hey, AMS is doing this now. Keep it exciting.
Well, we're accepting applications too for people that want to apply to work here.
Great talent.
Yeah, we're looking for talented
We're looking
people.
for people. And,
All right.
Production manager. We're looking for techs, like R&D techs, and we're looking for production staff and operators. And
so should they go to your website for that?
Website works,
which is what?
It's I think it's just attwillmedical.com.
It's attwillmedical.com.
Attwill, ATTWILL
Medical.
Medical.
Yeah, that stands for Attwill and William.
Oh,
That's where it came from.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. Well, there we go. There we go. A little bit of knowledge there. All right. So, Bill, T, thank you for being with me.
No problem. This is
It
great.
was
been-
a lot of
it's
fun. We
been
enjoyed it,
wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank all of you for watching. We've got actually a great crowd tonight. So thank you for watching live or
Wave to the people.
later. There will be a little thing over here where you can subscribe to the channel. And there's another one over here where you can go back and check out the first video that introduces what the live stream is. And that's all for tonight. Thank you very much. Hope to see you again.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.